The Me&Him podcast.
Well, welcome back to the Me&Him podcast, where we have candid conversations between me and my dad about fatherhood, manhood, the universe, the metaverse. What else, Dad? What else have we covered? Spirituality?
We can't talk about women. They're just too much of a problem.
Well, that's a whole nother podcast. You've had a few female visitors, I believe, and guests.
Oh, I had my
and dates by the sounds of things.
And she left this morning, and I thought, oh, wonderful. Matt's got a free day just to do what Matt needs to do for himself. Then another bloody woman rings up and has to come round.
Hey. You know, there, as you said,
the problem with being too bloody, or too popular, I should say.
Too popular, too darn spunky at 80. Yes, so you actually, speaking of which, you said you were going on a date of sorts yesterday. What happened with that? Or at least a lunch with someone?
It was it was one of the unmitigated disasters. Yesterday was full of disasters.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
I took the wrong turning on the motorway. I ended up being 1.5 hours late.
Oh, my God.
And this was my second attempt because I got the timing wrong. I thought it was 11:45, and I was hurtling down the highway and managed to get a phone call through. And she said, no, it's 1:45. So I went back home and I attended to the slow-cooked oxtail, which was dinner. And by that stage, it had been cooking at least 14 hours. Mm-hmm. And then I hurtled off. I took the wrong turning. I was 3/4 an hour late.
Wow.
It was an interesting day.
Okay. Well, we don't need to go into details, but I was sort of wishing you all the best and everything on that front.
Oh, and the really interesting part about it was, she's got exactly the same as my Christian name as my ex-partner.
Oh, right.
Who was sitting in my house entertaining a friend.
It's funny, isn't it, how it
goes?
My
wine. Damn it.
Well, and drinking your wine, yeah. Lucky you've got a lot of it there. So on my side, yeah, I actually, I went out, I've actually got a girlfriend, Dad. You know,
No, I don't believe it. Not you.
I guess you could say a woman
friend.
No
woman would want you.
Well, you know, I have been talking about being single I've been single for about a year or so, just you know, looking after myself and all the rest of it. And I've been on a couple of dates, but it wasn't that interesting. But this lovely young lady, when I say young lady, she's 42, so, you know, a bit younger than me.
She's not the one your mother recommended, is she?
No. You don't let that go to Mum's head.
I mean, because Mum always knows best.
Mum knows best. She's actually played matchmaker. It's classic. Like, you know, all the apps have failed me, so I go, all right, I'm giving up. But good old Mum comes through.
And you forgot your mother app.
Yeah, that's right. And she gets the number of this girl who works at the village she's at. And
you're in your 50s and you still don't listen to your mother.
Oh, no. I'm starting to listen now, let me tell you. She's bang on the money with this one. So anyway, we had a lovely dinner, went out to a nice restaurant. And it was just so lovely just sharing some time, sharing some laughs and what have you. And so, yeah, I'm actually feeling pretty good about life at the moment. Not just because of that. It's just there's a lot of things that are going well. And look, to be honest, listening to the podcast, the last few episodes that we've produced, I've been smiling and laughing along to our conversations. It actually sounds all right.
I have to admit, me too. I've listened to, particularly, I think I've listened to episode 3 about 10 times.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I don't know if we're getting high on our own supply here, but let's hope that other people can resonate too. And obviously the purpose of what we're doing here is not just, you know, tapping into your stories and your background and making a bit of a legacy piece for our kids and associated family, but also potentially inspiring conversations as well for other fathers, sons, and related men folk in different sort of dynamics. So I'm really hopeful, Dad, that this has some sort of larger impact than maybe just us having a good time, which we usually do and we chat anyway.
Well, refer them to Mike and the Mechanics, The Living Years, because that's what we're doing. We're actually having a proper father-son dialogue before I die.
Yeah.
As opposed to
hopefully
you thinking,
little...
oh, shit, I never got around to it.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that it's recorded for posterity is awesome. So look, I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you today. And as we just briefly discussed, we're going to talk about fatherhood and becoming fathers, which we both have pretty good experience at.
Yes, you a little bit more so than me.
Me a little bit more, yeah. I've been helping out the world, the population, the birth rate. So I'm really looking forward to that. So are you ready to jump in?
I'll always jump into any quagmire. That's my specialty.
All right, watch out. Look before you leap. Here we go.
The Me&Him podcast.
So for the last number of episodes, Dad, we've been tapping into the story of your background, your childhood, your uni life, and then more recently you've talked about mum and how you met, and you talked about living where she lived near the train lines, I think it was, and painted a real picture there. And I didn't know a lot of these stories, right? It's kind of nice to have the visual and have those gaps filled in, because I can relate to it in a way in my own sort of life and early relationships with different women. But I think we've got to the point now, and correct me if you think differently here, Dad, that we're going to delve into actually having our kids, which is a real... You talk about transition at one point in one of the other podcasts. That is a transition. Like, I don't care who you are, man or female. Oh, it's such a massive change. And I'm sure people who, listening to this podcast, who have had kids will understand and relate to the idea of the massive life shift that goes on when you have kids, because you just don't know, no matter how many books you read, how much study you do, how many people you talk to, you have no idea what's coming.
No one prepares you.
Nothing prepares.
I think it's a failing of the education system as well. At a certain point when kids are reaching puberty, there's various things that they should be told that will help them in their progress. And one is the consequences of having children.
There's a lot of things.
Should they choose to do so?
Yeah, I mean, we could do an episode on what kids should be taught at school, right? Like, how to center themselves, how to de-stress, how to, how to change a spark plug. I don't know. There's lots of stuff.
How to deal with life is basically
how to deal with life,
what it should be called.
Yeah,
because we all literally we are virgins when we leave school. And we start to experiment.
Yeah. And then life comes and smacks us in the face.
Curve.
It is. So with that in mind, would you mind just kind of, I guess, picking up from where you left off, which was, you'd met a beautiful lady, looked like Elizabeth Taylor. You obviously started to really bond with her.
She did at the time.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth Taylor doesn't look like Elizabeth Taylor anymore. But then I guess I'm just interested in filling the gap, right, to having kids. I know some of the story, but again, it's bitsy. So I'd like to hear from your opinion.
When we started to get serious, when we got engaged, we had this conversation, and we agreed between the two of us we would have a family, and we'd have between 2 and 4.
That's good to do up front.
And we ended up with between 2 and 4. We ended up with 3.
Yeah.
So we had that commitment. And I'll tell you an interesting story about, the home that you were effectively born in, or we brought you back from the hospital. There was a thing in New Zealand at that time called capitalising on the family benefit. And they allowed young couples to do that who've had the first baby. Let's say hypothetically the family benefit was $10 a month, and they'd give you 10 years worth of it.
Wow.
As a deposit on a house.
That's cool.
So we applied for that, and it was very close to Christmas. It was about 2.5 weeks before Christmas, and the bureaucracy moves very slowly, as everyone knows. And particularly in, was it 1965. It moved very slowly. Everything was, pen and paper and whatnot. And I decided to beat the system.
Okay.
So I went to one government department, and I got a bundle of papers, and this guy had signed off on. And then I'd said, "What's the next step?" And he said, "Oh, we post it to blah 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 in the same city."
What you said? I'll take it there.
And I said, "How long will it take?" And he said, "Oh, son, it'll be well after Christmas." I said, "Well, would you mind if I actually came up, picked up the signed papers, and delivered them myself?" He said, "Nobody's ever asked me that before, but why not?" And I did that with about 8 of them.
Right. Okay.
And we got the house.
Wow.
In 2.5 weeks before Christmas, and we moved in before Christmas.
Wow. Well done. And was that important to you to have that sort of, that bricks and mortar?
Yes, it was. It's all young couples want to do. And we were no exception. You want to be settled in your own house. And, as I think I mentioned in a previous episode, the paradigm in the 60s was that the man worked, and he could earn enough money to provide for all the household bills, etc. And
things change now, right?
The mother stayed at home and looked after the children.
Yeah, I've seen some studies that show, comparatively the amount of money that you were able to make in those days that could afford that could look after a family of a few, wife and a couple of kids and still pay the bills. Today, it takes 2 full-time working couples.
Absolutely right, son. The world has changed. And
they still can't afford the house. Yeah. So you got the house together, and so how did the whole, obviously at some point you went, okay, let's have some kids, or was it an accident? Was it planned? How did it work?
I think we had a 3-year gap as a young couple. Mm-hmm. Buying things, and of course it was in the 60s, the 60s decor, a white faux leather. It was made of plastic. Couch with burnt orange cushions and all that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. My eyes are hurting just thinking about that.
What would be called an op shop today, a Formica table and chairs from the 50s, which we had.
Stunning. It's probably coming back around again, to be honest.
They are. They're worth a fortune today, but they were worth nothing then. And we set up our little love nest, for the family.
Yeah, lovely.
Which both of us really wanted. And your sister came along in 1968, and what were you, 70 or 71?
I was 70, yeah.
Yeah, not 70. And Damien was 74.
How was, obviously, having a daughter, and I want to share a little bit about my experience here, but your first child, how did you go with that? Like, obviously, I imagine you're excited, or you?
Yeah, absolutely thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't fashionable those days, but your mother chose natural childbirth.
Okay.
And I was literally there for the whole process.
Right.
And I can tell you from experience, the placenta is a multicolored thing when it detaches.
Just as a quick aside, before my first child, they showed us the video of the woman giving birth, and I was like, yeah, Auntie, no, oh, that's fine, I'll tend all that stuff. I'm a good partner, whatever. And I remember sitting there, and we're watching in this group and watch this video, and I'm like, I was a bit shell shocked, because I'm like, I've spent my whole life looking at putting things in there, and something's popping out. I couldn't quite wrap my head around it.
It's a multicolored event. I mean,
oh my God,
it makes the rainbow look pale.
So you were there for the whole thing.
Yeah.
How did it go, and how did you feel afterwards, and what were the months past that like for you?
It was great, but it's a huge learning curve, which is why I made that comment about school doesn't prepare you for life. You were the second one, and your sister and you screamed all night. We didn't get any goddamn sleep, and no matter what we did.
I was a nightmare.
To make sure you were dry, and change your nappies, and and it's amazing how much perspiration comes out of the body of a young baby when it's screaming.
Wow.
I mean, the entire bassinet was wet. It wasn't a question of just changing the clothes.
Wow.
I had to change the mattress as well.
That's interesting, isn't it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was only your brother Damien who was the quietest, loveliest baby. You first two drove us absolutely nuts.
We mentioned a little bit about birth order in one of the last episodes, and you know, we spoke a little bit about the third born. You kind of you're not quite as helicopter parenting, you know.
Yeah,
do you think there's part of it is that you've done this
stage,
before?
You know, you can do the naughty things like have a glass of wine or whatever, because you realise that, you know, it doesn't really do any damage. I mean, it's only excess which is the problem.
Yeah.
But for the first one or two, you know, she abstained from just about everything.
Yeah, and it's the right thing to do, I guess, right? You want to be as you know, give it all the odds possible.
Well, you try and do the right thing, and it's only with experience you learn how to balance it. I know this is jumping forward in time.
That's fine.
But your sister, when she was about 3 or 4, had a little friend right next door, a little Audrey. And they'd play together. And it was wintertime, and so both mothers had rugged up the children, and they were sitting there making mud pies. And
right.
because they were nicely rugged
That's before
up,
we had iPads and everything for the kids, right?
Oh,
we
yeah.
made mud
But
pies.
they were very small.
Yeah, sure.
And then your mother said to me, Matt, come and have a look at this and be quiet. And I said, okay. And I realised why she said be quiet. Because they were eating the mud pies.
All right.
You know, I mean, this is why she never had any goddamn allergies or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah.
And,
something to be said for eating dirt.
You know, your mother went out and said, "Oh, you girls having a nice time? Or you're getting a bit dirty?" And she very tactfully diffused the situation. I spoke to Audrey's mother, and so the two mothers took the two girls simply because we didn't want them eating piles of dirt. They'd already started. And we worried as young parents.
Yeah.
But they came out of it fine.
Yeah, I guess, you know, again, first child, you know, they're going to do things first. You're going to experience things first. And potentially that's where you learn that, you know, not everything's going to result in them being maimed for life or what have you. So, okay. So I guess just to wrap this a little bit up, and we'll obviously continue the conversation.
Yeah.
In terms of how it changed you as a man, as a person, what would you say that fatherhood really did for you?
Well,
or didn't do?
I wanted to become a father, just as your mother wanted to become a mother. We didn't know what the hell we were in for, but fortunately we were young and strong, and we survived it, which is why, even though the fertility rates go down with age, it's not a wise idea for a woman or a mature couple in that age group to have children. By then your work patterns are settled.
Yeah.
And you don't have the stamina to deal with these little bloody monsters that you love ferociously. But
the resilience, even just like how do you cope with all this onslaught of new stuff when you are kind of set in a bit of a pattern and a routine? I imagine that is tough. So look, what I might do is I might flip it the other way around. Just sort of just touch on what I found for me personally.
sure.
Similar but different. And let's do that next.
The Me&Him podcast.
So that was good to hear about, like your experience with becoming a father. I've got a slightly different take on it, to be honest.
We're all different,
mine is
son.
more. Yeah, exactly. I think we all.
And you did yours in a different age period.
Different age.
Yeah.
Yep. Different, a different mind state, a different, world, everything. So I guess I might just cast back a little bit to start with in terms of, I've shared a bit about, and I've been quite candid, to be honest, about my background in terms of being kind of somewhat codependent in female company, using or not using necessarily, but treating some of the relationships a bit as a security blanket, over the years. And that's not me putting myself down. That's just me looking back and going, yeah, I probably did that. No biggie. They were getting something from me. I was getting something from them. It's all fine. And I've certainly changed and evolved over the years.
So
thankfully.
long as things are mutual, that's fine.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we don't know what we don't know in many of these cases in relationships, right? So with that as a bit of a backdrop, when Helen and I first decided to have kids, much like yourself, we wanted to have, a few kids, not just one, but, maybe three. And we did have three. And it was always something that was important to me. And funnily enough, one of the drivers for that was because I worked out at a very young age that, I remember you sharing in one of the last podcasts about your realization about death and dying and everything, like casting forward.
Well, it was most unusual. I mean,
yes,
nobody
at your
comes
age.
to terms of mortality at age 13, and
That's
did.
right. So my one was at the age of 10, which was...
Oh, tell me about it. Oh, I've never heard about that one.
Yeah, I'd looked at, and I guess, I don't know if we're just if being a seeker runs in the family, but we're a ponderer, or we just had too much time on our own, I'm not sure. But the thing that I had worked out by the age of 10 is that the purpose of life is to have kids. I couldn't see any other reason to be alive.
Going.
I couldn't.
And we both made a terrible mistake, considering the way the human race has gone.
Well, I don't know about that.
Even though our kids are nice. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about a mistake in that category.
That caveat. So I kind of worked out as a young age, like I think we're here to have kids. So I thought, all right, I'm going to be a dad, and that's important to me. And I think part of it was driven by maybe feeling a bit underfathered as well. I'm like, I'm going to have kids, and I'm going to be a father, right?
And you may well have thought, because your mother and I broke up when you were very young, subconsciously, that I'm going to do a better job than my dad did.
Mate, you could be right as well, right? There's a lot of factors playing into that. I didn't solve anything, but it seemed pretty obvious that really the reason we're here is to procreate, and continue the gene pool. So that was my thinking going into it. So I was always keen to have kids, and I hate to say played the field, but I'd certainly had a lot of different experiences, and I was lucky enough to have a teenage years where I could sort of do what I wanted, and I had a lot of freedom. And when it came to partnering seriously and settle down, I was quite happy to not only just do that, but then think about becoming a dad, because it wasn't going to be an accident. It was going to be much like yourself, Dad. It was going to be planned. Not as well planned as having that whole house and bought and paid for before we did it, but certainly it was intentional.
You were the same as me, son. I mean, you didn't follow my example, but I mean, you had the same feeling that yes, you did want to be a dad at some point in time.
Totally. So here's where I'm coming to now, right? So it was all planned, and worked hard to get. One thing I didn't realize, I don't know about you, I'd spent all this time trying not to get people pregnant. Then when you're trying to get a woman pregnant, it's actually not easy.
It's a different ball game, isn't it?
It's like, what? We're going to wait for a certain time.
Pun not intended, by the way.
It's a different ball. Yeah, well, yeah, there's definitely balls involved, but the ovulation cycle, the checking and the health and the well-being, and there was all these things. I'm like, hang on, it's actually harder than no one told me that it was actually to have a child. I mean, some people do it by accident. It seems easy. But when you're intentional about it, it actually is harder than you think.
Oh, yeah.
Which was it was kind of revelatory to me. I was like, oh, okay, well, I thought this would just happen
right.
when you
I've forgotten about that.
When you stop taking the pill, or you don't wear a condom, you just get pregnant. No, it's actually...
It's a lot of hard work, and when you're immature, you think, oh, that'll be joyous. I mean, no protection.
Yeah,
we can just go for it.
She grabs you.
It changes.
We got to get in the bedroom now. This is when it's happening. It's like what? It's my cycle. This is it. Oh my God. It was all new to me, right? I'm like, yes, boss. What do I got to do? I can't perform under this pressure.
I'm no longer a sex object. I'm a sperm object.
That's right. I'm not an object. That's right.
So, what a come down.
I know. But it was all for a greater good, right? So anyway, after all the hard work, she gets pregnant, and I have my eldest son. And Dad, I got to tell you, there was a shock in store for me. because I was all, it was all rainbows and unicorns for me. I'm like, yeah, we'll have children, I have, some kids, and I'm first kid, I'm going to be dad, this is great. And I was excited. And then the hard, cold reality kicked in. And I'm like, and suddenly...
I've got to interrupt you here.
Yeah, go for it.
This is why when the young couple, they've been in partnership for some time, be it marriage or living together, whatever the mechanism, and they come to you one day, and you're a mum and dad, and they say, "Oh, we've got some news for you," and you know exactly what they're going to say.
Yeah,
and
sure.
this is why potential grandparents smile so much, because we know you have no bloody idea of the torment ahead of you.
That's right. Yeah. You just bought yourself the hardest job in the world. Well done.
Absolutely.
Here's how it impacted me, right? And then I'm going to bring all these ends together now. I was used to being cared for by women, right? My mum, my girlfriends, my wife. It's to some degree they prioritized my needs, and I accepted that, and I thought to some degree my needs should be prioritized, right? Like I thought, not necessarily I was special, but I thought that was just the way it was. After having my first child, I suddenly realized how, and I'm going to use this word, selfish I actually was. I had no idea how selfish I was. I was selfish about sleep, Dad. I was selfish about my routine. I was selfish about going to work. I was selfish about, being able to eat what I wanted when I wanted, not having to change my plans at the drop of a hat.
It does wake you up a bit, doesn't it, son?
Oh, I could not believe it. And even more than that. So here's me going, shit, I am a selfish mofo. Like, I don't want to change any of this stuff, right? Like, I'm used to this routine and the way I am. So that was the first realization. So that's a shock, because I'm thinking, I want to be a dad, I can't wait. And then I'm like, holy moly, like this is not what I signed up for. Like me sacrificing so much of my, my routine and everything. Anyway.
What routine? It just gets blown to smithereens.
It's gone. Everything's in pieces now, right? And then the second part of that is I had got so used to people doing things for me. Now the impetus was on taking care of the mother who's keeping the child alive.
Yes.
I almost blew my brain. I'm thinking, so now not only do I not matter in this situation right now, I've got one job, and that is to provide, care, and make sure the mum's okay, so that
and
the
nurture.
children can be
the
nurtured.
other component is nurture.
Yes, as nurture. Dad, I struggle with that. That was so hard for me, and hey, look, I made mistakes. It was such
we
a
all
massive...
do, son. That's part of being human.
Yes, no. But it was such a massive adjustment. I just literally came face to face with the person who I thought I was, and it was probably the first real time I had that come to Jesus moment where I went, I'm not the person I thought I was.
Yeah.
I thought I had it together, or at least I had a mission, and then suddenly I realized that no, I'm a selfish guy who doesn't really want to adjust too much and too quickly, and I'm not used to looking after other people. And wow, that was hard. No, it took me a long time.
It's like, I'll draw a metaphor. Prior to that realization dawning upon you, you had been looking at yourself in a slightly frosted mirror. Mm-hmm. Like when you have a shower and it covers over. Mm. And then you've finally got a towel and you've wiped it clean and you've gone, oh my God, is that really me?
Yeah. But the worst thing about it, Dad, is you see it and then you go, I don't really want this to be the case. You then resist it because...
But I don't have a bloody choice. I've got to do it.
But yeah, exactly. I don't have a choice. So then now you're in a new game. You're in a whole new reality where you got a crying kid, you got a mother who's tired, she's got mastitis of the nipples, and you got and now
women get cranky because of the stress loading.
That's right.
Yeah. And
and they've lost their
independence. It's your job to help them with the child.
That's right.
And to say, darling, look, I still love you. I understand. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of hard work. It's real. It's necessary. Mm-hmm. And every couple goes through it one way or another.
Well, I'll tell you this, Dad. I didn't start growing up until I had my first child. I didn't even start. I thought I was doing a decent job. I was not even at the starting line.
You didn't have that on your own.
And then obviously, after the second child, I knew how to cut an umbilical cord this time without freaking out. After the third child, I'm like, hey, I'm getting good at this stuff,
I deserve a badge.
But even then, at least I knew what feelings were going to come up and that I'd have to sacrifice some sleep and help the mum out. And this was going to happen. I had no, and this goes back to what you said at the very beginning of the podcast. Please, why don't you tell me more of that at school?
Yes.
Because it was like I was learning this for the first time.
It's relevant to every child, male or female.
I wasn't prepared.
There's no difference.
Yeah. So I got to say, though, as I went, I did get better. I spent more time with them as their kids. I helped mum out more. I'd try to get home earlier from work. But it took me years and years to become what I considered to be a decent father. And I wish I could have learned that earlier. But, life doesn't work that way, unfortunately, right?
Well, it's because they didn't prepare us.
That being said, there are some men out there that, and maybe it's when you have a very sort of well-rounded and harmonious upbringing where you are ready and you do have support. And maybe that was part of it too for me, Dad. I didn't have support, not so much from you or mum or anything, but it was kind of like we're on our own and we didn't have the community.
Well, you were in a different country to start off with.
Exactly right. Different country, different city. It's hard when you're separated from...
Oh, it's hard on your own, son. You don't have to tell me that. It's incredibly hard.
Which is one of the reasons when I had my beautiful daughter, we were in the US at the time, we shifted back so that we could be near a family to make sure that they were in her life, because I realized how hard it was for the mum, when the kids went around. So also when the parents, grandparents and what have you went around. So look, that's my experience. It probably is a little bit revealing, but I don't think it's uncommon. I'm just stating it because it's true. I'm not denying it anymore,
Well, I think what you've said can be summarized. We are selfish human beings, and because we're not prepared for what happens, we have to make this choice, and it's a forced choice, between our own selfishness and our need to look after what we have created, which is our total responsibility.
Totally. Yeah.
And you get a whole new idea about what responsibility really is.
Totally. I appreciate you summarizing like that, because each time I became a father, I became more of a man. I learned more about myself, and I was able now to give freely to other children that I meet through friends and acquaintances, and I care for kids. I know what my responsibility is to help guide them and sacrifice a bit of time and energy and what have you.
And
for
while
others.
You were going through that phase, you've established bonds with other young people like you who were having children, because each party understood what the others were going through in their private lives.
That's right. Look, we've only just really touched on it, I guess, but it's been nice sharing some of that with you, and I probably haven't done that so much previously. So let's
you've never done it, and I'm proud of you for sharing it.
Thanks. Let's park it for now, and we've got another very exciting segment coming up. Another episode of Emails from Dad.
Oh my God.
Emails from Dad.
So I've really been enjoying this Emails from Dad, not because necessarily I think the content's so great. It's just because that way I get to actually read your emails, because they collect in my inbox.
Oh, you actually read some of them? Oh my God.
It makes me read them. No, seriously. You do, and I've got to actually, on the website, I've created a blog which I've called Matt Crap, right? So this is going to be your spot to add Matt Crap for the, the masses.
If anybody's listening, I write a lot. And most of it's unfinished. So I just call it Matt Crap. I'm entitled to, because I write the stuff.
Exactly. Some of it's, well, they say you can't polish a turd, but I'll tell you what, you do a pretty good job.
I don't know. There's a lot of shit there.
All right. So speaking of which, I was looking back, I had the whole stock of emails that I've saved over the years, but then I saw one that came through a few days ago, and I flagged it because I thought this would be perfect for us to chat about on this coming podcast. And it was a poem that I don't know the background to it. I don't know. I haven't even spoken to you about it until this moment.
I'd better explain
it
in a moment when you've.
Yes. So it's called I Yearn. I read it, and straight away I'm like, I really like this. I'm not sure exactly why. I think it's just the contradictional, the opposing sort of themes of violence. Plus, I don't know, it's got an uneasy feel to it. So I'll let you describe it.
Okay. To anyone to any poor individual who's listening, suffering all this stuff. I write a lot of things, and they're usually inspirational, and they come from very different perspectives. Now, this one is a bit cruel. It wasn't intended to be. It's just how it came. So don't take it that I'm a budding terrorist or anything like that. It's just an expression of the subconscious. I yearn to be an assailant, some instrument of violent change with a pocket full of weapons and a mind suitably deranged. I'll hide among the flowers and leave no trace of scent, so no one except dear Poirot knows my design or my intent.
I fucking love that. So Poirot, eh? How did he fit into the mix?
Inspector Poirot.
All right. So
Chief Inspector Poirot.
Chief Inspector Poirot.
Agatha Christie.
Yeah. So I love it. Tell me more. Where did it come from, and
I don't know,
why?
son. What tends to happen is I'm an inspirational writer. Like in the old days when I mowed lawns, I'd be mowing the lawns and something would flood into my head, and I think, oh yeah. And I keep mowing the lawns, and it would irritate me to the point where I have to stop mowing the lawns and write this, whatever it was, 4 lines or 10 lines down, so I could get on with my daily chores. And this is the same sort of stuff. And anybody out there, you can understand why I call it mad crap. I'm not suggesting or recommending that we do anything violent or opposed to the laws of our country. It's just a goddamn poem that came from somewhere.
I yearn to be an assailant, some instrument of violent change with a pocket full of weapons and a mind suitably deranged. That's so good.
I'm sorry about that, son.
I'm going to turn that into a song or something, It's got to be heavy, though. It's got to be heavy metal or something. Oh, my God.
I know it's weird.
Yeah.
But I write a lot of weird stuff as well as beautiful stuff.
Well, I hope there's people out there who do appreciate the sort of, mat crap, but also the creative process of being able to express oneself in a way that it conjures up imagery and feelings and emotions. Even if it isn't fully formed, it's still something new. Right?
We see, the strange thing is, I was very creative when I was young, and I didn't know until I went to high school at age 13 that I was also a budding scientist. And I know that that's usually a very strong contradiction, but all my working life has been about work. It hasn't been about the creative world. So whatever creative stuff I've done, painting or poems or songs or whatever, I've done in my own time, in my own way. And that's all taken a second place to, being a provider, laterally, firstly for my family and laterally for myself. And all this stuff just, I guess my subconscious is a sewage pond. And
that's hence the crap.
It bubbles up. And
well,
I catch some of the bubbles.
You definitely have some nuggets in there, floating to the top. All right.
Let's not elaborate on what kind of nuggets.
All right. Well done. That was emails from Dad. It's time to wrap it up.
The Me&Him podcast.
Well, that was fun, Dad. I had a good time.
It was.
Yeah. A few laughs and some news stories and what have you. I've just been enjoying sort of hearing stuff and even listening back to the other podcasts, stories I've never heard before. I'm assuming that's the same for you?
Yes. You're telling me things about yourself that I've never heard, and sometimes they bring tears to my eyes.
Yeah, well, look, you've said some lovely things over the course of the last few episodes, and I think for us it's a very sort of heartfelt experience, and I'm hoping that we're just encouraging more of that energy for anyone who may be listening as well. I guess in terms of moving forward, we've got a couple more episodes in this first sort of block of 12.
Only 12
episodes, or
my goodness,
season 1, and I think I may have laid this out a little bit earlier on a previous podcast. Can't quite remember, to be honest, but that the next 12 will be devoted to topics specifically that affect men.
Yes,
fathers.
I think that's a good idea, son, because we've talked about the way our lives have unfolded, and that's probably of relevance to some men, but there are proper men's issues.
Yes.
That now that we've hopefully got some credibility, we should address.
I agree. And I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know where it's going to go. I know we've got some guests that are lining up, and we will announce more as we go. But we've got, for the next episode, where we've landed in this timeline is obviously becoming fathers, really major life change and a transition point. And next one, because this is kind of about me extracting your story, what I would like to sort of look at is what happened when things changed, when you and Mum separated.
Yes, because I was catapulted into a series of new lives, and it had an impact on your children, and very, very complicated situation, but lots of relationships involving children break up.
Yeah.
And so
over 50%, Dad, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's high. So why don't we just tell them how it was in our lives?
Yeah. You know what? And just to sort of paint a bit of a rosy picture on that, then maybe otherwise could be painted. The fact that we're doing this podcast, I don't think would have come about if we hadn't have been through what we've been through.
Yes, we've both been through a lot of pain in our respective dimensions. And that needs expressing.
Yeah.
And sharing.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. I know that was a very tough period for you. I know it was tough for me, and it certainly was something that it's taken me, a good couple of decades to reconcile and really realize what I needed to hold on to and what I didn't. And look, I love doing this with you, and I think we're onto something here. And just stay around.
Well, I'm in the drop-off zone, son, so it could be tomorrow. It could be in 2 or 10 years' time. Only the Lord knows. I don't.
Yeah. We've all got a ticket, I believe.
Oh, hang on. No, it's the Grim Reaper. He's the one who knows.
Oh, does he? Okay. Well, tell the Grim Reaper we've got a couple more episodes before he's got his.
I promise not to die before the end of the first series.
Okay, good. All right, Dad, take it easy. I'll speak to you in the next episode.
Thank you, son.
The Me&Him podcast.